You're listening to the Bluejay Breakdown.
Welcome back to the Bluejay Breakdown. Jacob and Anna alongside with you. After the long holiday break, we have some business to discuss, Jacob. Some things have happened.
Yeah, quite a bit has happened over the last couple of weeks since we last recorded. On the Creighton men's side, they went 2-2, and Fedor Žugić became available.
Absolutely.
So that kind of is a big bit of news.
It was a surprise.
We have not yet discussed. Yeah. Surprise to Fedor and the staff, who found out like the day before the game and then didn't get the final word until that morning of the Villanova game.
Mm-hmm.
So what fans have been waiting for finally happened, although they've had to be more patient with how it's played out, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
First, let's talk about some of what has happened on the court, because this team is interesting.
It is.
They still looking for their first road win, but they did get a couple of big wins at home.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of the road issues, that loss to Georgetown happened after we last recorded. That did not go well. No. 81-57, and got blown out in the second half. That being said, Georgetown is 12-2, 3-0 in Big East play, and they've risen almost 20 spots in KenPom since Creighton played them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a Q2 loss right now. Not looking,
maybe live with that.
Yeah, not looking. It's kind of similar to Nebraska loss, where wasn't great at the time, but Nebraska's gotten a lot better since then. So right now, Creighton doesn't have a bad loss. With the way all the teams they played have improved. Again, Georgetown's the closest thing, but they're playing pretty well, and it was on the road. So that wasn't great. It bounced back though against Villanova. Again, we talked about Fedor. They got the news, but he wasn't a big part of that game. But they beat Villanova 86-79. Key there, 7 turnovers. And that's a theme that we'll talk about as we continue with this episode. But they kept turnovers down. Ryan Kalkbrenner, 23 points, 5 rebounds, 2 blocks. And Stephen Ashworth and Jemiah Neal combined for 40 points and 17 assists.
Mm-hmm.
So when you've got those 3 guys playing well, this is a really good team. And they were playing well in that one and got the win. And then that carried over into the St. John's game. 57-56, they held on.
Barely.
Yeah. Offset 19 turnovers and by holding St. John's to 37% from the field.
Yeah.
And what Ryan Kalkbrenner did in that game, that was up there with among his best defensive performances. He was just absolutely everywhere, affecting everything. So there they are. Got through those 2 wins. And heading into the Marquette game, what do you see from that St. John's game? And I know you had conversations afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that came to mind most is gritty over pretty, and I think those are the type of games that Creighton is going to have to become comfortable with because they don't have that offensive firepower that could necessarily be there every game, right? Because you're still trying to figure out those offensive pieces, and it does depend a lot on, like you said, those big 3, if you will, for Creighton really contributing. But I would give a lot of props to that last defensive stand by Creighton. And I mean, St. John's had 2 opportunities at the basket, same guy. And I mean, they were both great looks. And it was Jason Green standing his ground there, absolutely vertical as possible, which was awesome to see. But he, no foul drawn there. And I mean, that's how they won the game. It was on defense. And I think that's something that Creighton wants to prove in their identity.
Yeah, winning a game with 57 points. That
they don't do that often.
Exactly. And that's something that they're, like you said, they're going to have to make part of their identity moving forward, with just kind of the reduced state of the roster and the lack of firepower. Moving into that Marquette game, it's unfortunate. 79-71 loss. Marquette's, I think, now 7th in the AP poll. They're a top 10 team there. And Creighton had their chances, but all season long, it's been Stephen Ashworth and Ryan Kalkbrenner carrying the team offensively, shouldering the load. And for whatever reason in this game, they just had both of them just completely off. Kalkbrenner was 4 of 11 from the field, almost all of it at the rim. And Stephen Ashworth 1 of 13 from 3. So they both had double doubles in a game where they weren't playing well. And that's Stephen Ashworth's 10 assists to 1 turnover. especially after the St. John's game where he had 10 turnovers.
Yeah.
He played really well. He just didn't shoot well. And it's unfortunate that you had him shooting poorly and Kalkbrenner not making shots he normally makes in the same game because it just couldn't afford it, despite kind of the supporting cast giving them a chance there. So it hurts. 21 points off 12 turnovers. 12 turnovers isn't terrible against a team that really forces them, but it's the kind of turnovers and their inability to get stops off them and force their own turnovers that really cost them. And then Marquette hit 11 threes and Creighton hit 7. Creighton's defensive game plan, it worked out well enough. It's weird, the 5-out matchup with Kalkbrenner, trying to keep him at the rim as much as possible. He was guarding guards basically that whole game because they're big, they're stretch guys. So there's a lot of kind of tweaking and cross matches and stuff defensively. But it kind of like the two guys that they put Kalkbrenner on and were okay with shooting. They want to combine 3-15 from 3. The problem is Creighton just didn't shoot any better on their side to take advantage of that. So I think it's a disappointing result, but I think what Stephen Ashworth talked about afterward is like in comparison to the Georgetown game, because Marquette, they gave up a 26-3 run in this game after building up an 8-point lead in the first half. They gave up 12-0 run in the first half, and then 14-3 to start the second half to dig themselves a 15-point hole. In the Georgetown game, they crumbled. The ball pressure got to them. They just couldn't do anything right. Couldn't make shots, and they just folded. That didn't happen against a much better team. Credit to Georgetown, like I said, they're a lot better than we thought they were. Marquette is significantly better than Georgetown, and Creighton battled back. They cut that down to within 3. Jemiah Neal made some huge plays during a stretch for Creighton to get them back in the game, and they just couldn't quite make the plays to get over the hump. But that is progress from, again, the Georgetown loss to where they are against Marquette, where they played until the buzzer, that they found a way to get back in the game even when they weren't playing well. Again, some of that grittiness that we saw in the St. John's game, they just dug themselves too big of a hole against a really good team. So that is the progress I think that we saw in that game. Unfortunately, it is a huge missed opportunity because as we move forward, you start to see their resume, and that would have looked really nice at the top there. Right now, they've got one quad 1 win, that Kansas game, and they had Pop Isaacs for that game. So they don't kind of match that in post Isaacs world. How are the committee going to value that win? So you look at you look at right now, they're 9-6 overall, 2-2 in the Big East. They're 49th in KenPom, 55th on offense, 39th on defense, 59th in the net. So not where we're used to Creighton being. And it's understandable with all the things they've gone through and what they lost from last year. But like they've got some work to do. They're 1-5 in quad 1, and they're 3-1 in quad 2. And one of those wins is just very on the fringe there. Notre Dame is right at the cutoff mark. So they drop a game or two, that drops down to a Q3 win. So there's not a lot of substance on this resume right now. That Marquette game was a huge opportunity because how many more times are they going to
have opportunity to win a quad?
Win that close
game,
on the road. Are they going to have the chance to win the game at UConn? I don't know. At St. John's, I don't know. Like, those are some of the other big ones left.
That's the problem with the Big East, is that it's any given night for any team. So there's also, I mean, you look at another Georgetown game, a DePaul game, you could lose.
Yeah, the floor has risen so much up from where it was, except for maybe Seton Hall this year. But also the problem is this outside of Marquette and UConn, the middle of the pack isn't. There's not a whole lot.
It's not going to help you if you win, but it's going to kill you if you lose.
It's just kind of games that you have to win that aren't going to help you, but they're not going to hurt. Like, they're just kind of games on the schedule that aren't going to pad your resume. It's just about getting wins. So this was the one chance that they had to kind of really put a stamp on that resume. They've got 6 quad 1 games left as it stands, with UConn home and away, at home against Marquette, and then at St. John's, Villanova, and Xavier. So those are kind of your opportunities looking left, that Creighton's got to go out and win some of those games, and then they got to hold serve at home and against, again, those mid pack teams that we talked about. So The biggest issue right now, just in terms of on-court play and the differential between them and their opponents, is the live ball turnovers. They are 349th in steal percentage by their opponents, and they are 360th in steal percentage on their side, on defense there. And that's what we saw in that Marquette game, where it wasn't a terrible. Marquette had 7 steals, 12 turnovers overall, but they could turn them into 21 points, and Creighton only forced 7 turnovers. And so it's just, anytime you're at that big of a possessions disparity, you have to be really good offensively to offset that. And Creighton's been good. Like, you look at all their other metrics and they're winning in the ways that they want to, just not in a big enough degree to offset kind of the turnover issue. So that's where they have to most improve moving forward.
When you look at Fedor, and I feel like some fans thought he'd come in and play 20 minutes, but that's not the case necessarily, because they didn't even really expect him to be cleared. So they weren't necessarily putting him with, I mean, he's been on scout team
the entire time.
Yeah,
up until they got the news.
How soon can he get into whatever McDermott state he wants him in to play 15, 20 minutes?
That's the biggest question, because you look at the first 3 games, 2 minutes, 42 seconds, did nothing, got a rebound or 2, 650 that second game, and he made a few plays. You could see, like, okay, he can help. Like, he got downhill. He missed a layup on a great drive against a closeout, but Kalkbrenner was there for the easy putback. He got Fred King to the line with a great drive and dump off. And then he moved the ball to Isaac Trout for Creighton's first 3 against Villanova there. Just a smart heads-up play. So it's 6 points basically directly he put on the board just in plays that he made while he was out there. And then he was out there for 1:31 against Marquette, and you could see he made a 3 first points in a Creighton uniform, kind of rattled around the rim and dropped for him. But that was in between 2 really bad turnovers. One, just a little panicked, kind of got happy feet, trying to feed the post against ball pressure, and then just kind of trying to throw a flare pass because that's what the play was. But Marquette took it away and pick 6, layup the other way, and that's the last we saw of him. As Mac just felt like that they got outscored 9-3 basically in his minutes out there. So he hit the 3, but then they also scored off both his turnovers, and so I think Mac decided at that point, like, he just doesn't look comfortable enough. They can't afford to let him play through it.
They can't let him experiment, especially in that game.
Yeah, exactly. The margins were too small to kind of let him try to play through that. And you don't see the Marquette ball pressure in Creighton's practice gym, unfortunately. they do what they can. The scout team works hard, but they don't have Stevie Mitchell's and Chase Ross's on Creighton's team. So, it's like you said, the scout team. So not only is it scout team where he's not gaining chemistry with the starters and all that, like, he's not running the plays regularly. He's running other teams' plays, and the kind of workout regimen is different for, he's essentially kind of on the redshirt track because the coaches didn't have confidence that he would be available. And they're like, we need to give these reps to the guys that are going to play right now, because obviously they need practice reps. So it's just kind of flipping it, kind of like McDermott has compared it to Alex O'Connell when the NCAA made him eligible, transfers eligible mid-season there. He was on track to redshirt. He wasn't. He was, again, those guys lift differently. It's a completely different kind of practice regimen for those guys that aren't preparing to play. So they had to flip that mid-season. So it's a combination of a stamina issue where he's not used to going full out for extended stretches in the actual game. Whereas working out extra, he's kind of working on his body more so than just being in game shape. It's kind of working towards the future and of all sorts of things. So you've got to get over that before we can get to the extended stretches of play, as we've seen just kind of a brief spurt so far.
And Creighton fans, he's also a freshman, so it's not like this is he's technically a freshman,
a first-year college student. They still haven't determined his status, but first year in college and completely different basketball compared to what he's played previously. And so it's just, and there's a different, like, it's not like, oh, he hasn't learned the playbook or anything. It's not like he's sitting there not doing their work. Like the coaches, there's a difference between like having a playbook and understanding the plays and being able to run it consistently on both ends of the floor. When the bullets are live, there's a lot of, like, you have to react to what the defense is taking away. It doesn't go as easily as when you're running through a play in practice. So there are just a lot of hurdles that he's got to continue to work through. And that's why this week in particular is big.
Huge.
They had 7 full days between games. And we're going to talk as we record this on Tuesday, we're going to talk to Mac and some players. It's going to be a little early in the week to kind of discuss that and what they've been able to accomplish. But the last time they had this break, they had finals, they had the Christmas in the middle of it, break, guys went home, came back. Is 7 straight days of working on themselves and then getting ready for Butler. So if there's a time that he's going to be able to make a leap, it's this week. So hopefully he can make up the ground that he needs to be a viable part of the rotation moving forward, because as we saw in that Villanova game, he's got skills that this team needs. His ability to both shoot and then attack a closeout because teams know he can shoot and get in the paint and make a play for himself or others. That's something that they're lacking in their wings right now because they're playing power forwards at the 3 spot. So if he can get out there and be a viable player where you've got Jemiah, Stephen Ashworth and Fedor all out there together, that's more of a potent perimeter attack. He's just got to, again, get to that point where he's comfortable enough to help them. Before
we flip over to the women's side, just quickly, your thoughts for the matchup against Butler on Saturday morning.
Yeah, this set up as well as you can possibly hope for to get their first win. Butler's 7-8, 72 in KenPom. They've lost 7 straight after winning a handful in a row. They've got another one on Wednesday before Creighton sees them. So that being said, it's an early game at Hinkle. So kind of that's been a tough place for Creighton to play in the past.
You got the lighting there in the morning.
The 11 a.m.
the window
off. It's kind of a strange setup, but in terms of the level that Butler's playing at, it's a game that Creighton has to go out and win. Like they got to go get over that road hump, get this done. Jamil Telford is back. He gave them problems last year when Creighton played them. Averaging 16 points, 5 boards, 4 assists. I'm guessing that'll be Jason Green. The matchup there, we'll see kind of how much growth he's made from seeing Butler previously. Pierre Brooks also back, averaging 15 points, 5 boards, 2 assists, shooting 39% from 3. It's probably a Jemiah Neal matchup, I would imagine. And then Patrick McCaffrey, the transfer from Iowa, averaging 13 and 5, shooting 42% from 3. So those are kind of the 3 big guns that you got to worry about.
And Caitlin Clark's boyfriend.
He's on staff, yes. We'll see. I don't know what impact that.
Do you think Caitlin's pulling up to this game too, hopefully?
I don't know what she's doing right now. It's not part of the Unrivaled, so I don't know.
She's supporting. That's what she's doing. She's supporting the Butler Bulldogs right now.
But Butler's shooting 38% from 3. That's about the only thing that stands out to them on offense. So Creighton's got to lock in a scouting report. Everybody's got to do their job. And then hopefully whatever bug that got to Steven and Ryan, that they've gotten through it, and those guys will play like they normally do. And I think Creighton can get a win.
All right, on to the women's side. 4-1 since we last spoke. And despite the blowout loss against UCLA, number 1 team in the nation, pretty good showing from the Bluejays. But, of course, we got to talk about that 70-41 loss. UCLA is good. I mean, is that news? I don't know.
So Creighton is 12-3. They won 3 big bounce back, won 3 straight Big East games after that loss at UCLA. They're 12-3, and the 3 losses, those teams have a combined 42-4 record. UCLA is undefeated, number 1 in the country. Kansas State is 15-1, 12th in the country, and then South Dakota State, we talked about, tough team. They've got the 3 losses, but they're 12-3. So it's another good team there. So Creighton doesn't have a bad loss, and they play 2 of the best teams in the country. And what they've shown is they aren't on that level. It just matching physically, skill set level against Kansas State, against UCLA with the size they can throw out there, and the athletes skill level. Creighton's just not there yet. That being said, they're still a really good team, and they've shown that, and they're taking care of business in league play so far. But I think they're not playing as well as they possibly could, and I don't think they're satisfied with their recent play. I went to that the Butler home game, and 68-64 win. They held on for that one. Flannery wasn't in love with kind of their, like they missed some shots that they would normally make, but he didn't love the defensive execution, and there were some mental mistakes and some slip ups and things, and the players weren't happy about it either. And then, but they got the win. You move on to the road game at Providence, and they kind of slow start. They were down 2 at halftime, and then what was it? A 23-2 third quarter. So I'd say he was probably happy with the defense in that quarter. And so they won 60-46 despite shooting 36% from the field and 3 of 22 from 3. So we talked about the gritty not pretty for the men in that St. John's game. This was that and then some.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a road win. They got it done there. And like I said, they're off to a 4-0 start in Big East play. And now the schedule gets tougher here as they head into these next 2 games, 1 home, 1 road before we next record.
Yeah. Marquette, I mean, especially 6 p.m. game, that one's at home. What are your biggest keys for that matchup against Marquette, a quality team?
Yeah, Marquette, they are 2-1 in league play. That one loss was a 77-45 loss to UConn. So not a pretty result, but it's UConn. And that they're going to do that to a lot of teams in the league. They're 10-4 overall. So solid team. They've got to take care of business, hold their own against Skylar Forbes, 6'1" forward, averaging 16 points, 7 boards, and 2 blocks a game. Can shoot a little bit. And Lee Voker is their best guard, averaging 13 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals. Not much of a shooter. Neither is Hallie Weiss, averaging 10 points, 7 boards, 2 assists, kind of a wing forward there. So those are kind of the 3 players that Creighton's going to have to match up with. But it's largely about Creighton and what they do, and making sure that Lauren Jensen, Morgan Molly, as good of a 1-2 punch as you'll find in the league. And then again, just enough support around them. And we've seen different games between Keani Lockett, Molly Mogensen, and Kennedy Townsend. Those 3 are all averaging about 6 to 7 points a game off the bench. They're all shooting well from 3. And it's kind of been different ones, different players of them stepping up each game. So just got to make sure that they play their game. They're locked in defensively. They cut out some of the mental mistakes that we saw against Butler, and then just knock down shots when they get them.
Then they play a great Seton Hall team, 4-0 in the conference, 12-3 overall. I think that'll be, and I mean, in watching Seton Hall this year and just years past, their identity is that scrappy defense. Like, they're going to heat the ball up. They're going to put pressure on you. So it'll be interesting to see how Creighton matches that. Not necessarily the size factor with Seton Hall, but rather just the grittiness on defense that they'll have to, I guess, endure the entire matchup.
Yeah, and they'll have to keep Faith Masonius in check. She's having a great season, 18 a game, shooting 38% from 3. They got a couple of young guards in Jada Eads and Savannah Catalan that are both averaging double figures that Creighton will have to account for. But again, going on the road, taking on another tough team. While Creighton's taking care of business so far, it hasn't been the toughest schedule. Now as we move forward, they're starting to get into the tougher swing of league play. So we'll start to see what they're really made of.
Well, we'll find out, and we'll talk to you next time on Bluejay Breakdown.
A Hurrdat Sports Network production.